A few years back, I was driving a long-haul route from Chicago down to Atlanta. I'd been on the road since 4 that morning, mostly interstate, nothing special. Weather was just regular Midwest spring, cloudy, light drizzle on and off, not enough to slow anybody down. I stopped for dinner around 7 at a truck stop outside Indianapolis. Got a burger and fries and black coffee, filled the tanks, checked the tires. Nothing fell off. By the time I hit Kentucky, it was past midnight. Traffic had thinned out to almost nothing. Just me, a couple other rigs, and the occasional car. I was listening to a podcast, half paying attention, trying to stay awake without blasting music like some guys do. Around 2:15, I saw the lights up ahead. First, it looked like brake lights on the shoulder. Then I realized it was hazard lights. A dark sedan pulled way over, almost in the grass. The driver's door was open. Somebody was standing next to it, waving both arms, slow and steady, like they were tired but desperate. I eased off the gas. You see stuff like that sometimes. Family with a flat, kids sick, whatever. Most truckers won't stop on the interstate at night anymore. Too many stories. But this stretch was pretty open, good visibility, and the person waving didn't look big or aggressive, just somebody in a hoodie and jeans. I put my flashers on and coasted to a stop about 50 feet behind him, left the engine running, rolled my window down a couple inches. "You okay?" I called out. The person walked toward me, mid-30s, white guy, beard, looked normal enough. He kept his hands where I could see him. "Man, thank you," he said. Voice was hoarse, like he'd been yelling. "My wife's in the car. She's having really bad stomach pain. We think it might be her appendix or something. Phone's dead, no service out here. Can you call for help?" I nodded, already reaching for my phone. Signal was weak, but there. "Yeah, hang on." While I was dialing 911, he stepped closer to the cab. "Appreciate it. We've been sitting here 20 minutes and nobody even slowed down." The dispatcher picked up. I gave the mile marker, described the car, said possible medical emergency. They said an ambulance was on the way, ETA about 15 minutes. I told the guy that. He thanked me again, then asked if I had any water. Said his wife was throwing up. I had a couple bottles in the cooler behind the seat. I told him to wait, climbed down from the cab and went around to the passenger side to grab one. That's when I noticed the second car. It was parked further back in the weeds, no lights on, about 100 yards behind my trailer. Just the faint outline against the tree line. Dark color, maybe black or dark blue. No movement, but it hadn't been there when I first pulled over. I would have seen it. I handed the water to the guy. He took it, said thanks, and walked back toward the sedan. I stood there for a second watching. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't pin it. The wife never got out, never even cracked a window. Just this one guy handling everything. I climbed back up into the cab. The 911 lady was still on the line asking questions. I told her everything looked under control. Ambulance should be there soon. She said okay and disconnected. I put the truck in gear but didn't pull out yet. Sat there idling. The guy was back at the sedan now, leaning in the driver's window like he was talking to his wife. Still no sign of her. Rain had picked up a little, streaking the windshield. Then I saw the third thing. Movement in my side mirror. Not from the sedan, from the dark car behind me. 2 figures got out low and quick, staying close to the shoulder. They were carrying something long, crowbars or tire irons, I couldn't tell. They started walking toward my trailer, staying in the blind spot as much as it could. My stomach dropped, not in a movie way, just this cold, heavy feeling like I'd made a stupid mistake and now it was too late. I didn't think. I just hit the brakes to set the parking brake hard, then slammed the truck into gear and started rolling forward. The guy by the sedan looked up fast. He yelled something I couldn't hear over the engine. Then he ran toward my cab. I accelerated. Not fast. 60,000 pounds doesn't jump, but steady. The guy reached the door and grabbed the handle. I locked it just in time. He banged on the glass once, hard, then let go as I picked up speed. In the mirror, I saw the two from the back car start running. One of them threw something at the trailer. It clanged off the side. They kept coming for a few seconds, then gave up when they realized I wasn't stopping. I drove another 2 miles before I pulled over at the next exit. Hands were shaking. Called the state police, told them exactly what happened. Mile marker, descriptions. They said they'd send a unit. I waited in a lit gas station parking lot until a trooper showed up. He took my statement, said they'd had similar reports on that stretch before. Guys staging breakdowns, trying to get drivers to stop. Sometimes it's just robbery, sometimes worse. They never caught the ones from that night. The sedan was gone by the time they got there. No plates, no description that helped. I finished the run to Atlanta, slept in the truck that night with the doors locked and the lights on. Next day, I kept checking my mirrors every 30 seconds. Every time I saw a car on the shoulder, my chest got tight. I still drive, still do the long hauls, but now when I see hazard lights at 2 a.m., I don't slow down. I call it in from the cab and keep rolling. Most nights that's enough, but every once in a while I think about that dark car sitting back in the weeds with its lights off, about how long they'd been waiting there, about how close I came to climbing down with that water bottle and walking between my truck and that sedan. And I wonder how many other drivers didn't notice the second car until it was too late. This happened about 3 years ago on a stretch of I-70 in Kansas. I was driving back from visiting my brother in Colorado. It was a Tuesday night, maybe 12:30 in the morning, and I was maybe 4 hours from home. The kind of drive where you've got your cruise control set. You're listening to the same playlist you've heard twice already, and you're just trying to get there. I'd eaten a gas station burrito somewhere around Colby, and honestly, I think that's what started the whole thing. My stomach started turning about an hour later. Nothing serious, just enough that I knew I needed to pull over soon. The thing about that part of Kansas at midnight is there's nothing, like genuinely nothing. No rest stops, no exit ramps with truck stops lit up in the distance, just flat, dark land on both sides and your headlights cutting about 50 yards ahead of you. I held out as long as I could, then pulled off onto the shoulder. I left the engine running. I always do that. I didn't even fully close the door. Just pushed it most of the way shut and walked maybe 20 feet off the road into the grass. There was enough moon that I could see okay. I was out there maybe 45 seconds before I looked up. There was a car parked on the shoulder behind mine. Dark, no headlights, no running lights, nothing. It was just sitting there maybe 100 feet back. My first thought was that it had been there the whole time and I just hadn't noticed it when I pulled over, which is a reasonable thought. People break down. People pull over to sleep. I told myself that and looked away. Then I heard a door. Not opening, closing. The soft, careful kind of close. The kind of sound a person makes when they don't want to make noise. I want to be clear about what I did, because I'm not proud of it exactly, but it was the right call. I didn't finish what I pulled over for. I just started walking back toward my truck, and then pretty quickly that walking became something faster than walking. I got to the door, got in, and I pulled out onto the highway. I didn't look back right away. I was watching the road, getting my speed up, and it took me maybe 6 or 7 seconds before I checked the rear view. There was a person standing on the shoulder, right where I'd been standing. Not near the other car, not walking back toward it, just standing there in the spot I'd just left, facing the direction my truck had gone. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. The moonlight wasn't that good. Medium height, maybe. Dark clothes. Just standing there. I drove. I had the truck up to about 90 before I realized I was doing it, and I kept checking the mirror and waiting for headlights to appear behind me. For a long stretch, nothing came. I was watching so hard that I almost missed a gentle curve and had to correct. After that, I made myself look at the road more. About 15 minutes later, headlights appeared behind me. Now, I know that doesn't mean anything. That's a highway. People drive on highways. But they were back far enough that I couldn't tell what kind of vehicle it was, and they stayed back that distance for a long time. Every time I adjusted my speed, they seemed to adjust too. Or maybe they didn't. I genuinely couldn't tell, and I know how that sounds. I took the next exit I saw. There was a 24-hour McDonald's about a quarter mile off the ramp, and I pulled into the lot and parked under the lights near the door. I sat there for probably 20 minutes watching the road. The headlights I'd seen went right past on the highway without exiting. Or they might have been different headlights entirely. I couldn't say for sure. I went inside and got a coffee I didn't really want and sat at a table by the window. The place was empty except for the staff. I stayed until I felt okay enough to get back on the road. The rest of the drive home was fine. Nothing happened. But here's the part I keep coming back to, and I've thought about this a lot. When I pulled over, I did a quick check in both mirrors before I got out. It's just habit, and I'm almost certain the road behind me was empty, which means that car was already there with no lights on before I ever stopped, just sitting on the shoulder in the dark, waiting for something, or nothing, I don't know. And whoever was in it heard me pull over, and they waited long enough to let me get out of my truck before they got out of theirs. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know if they wanted anything. I just know that most of the time when I tell this story, the part that gets people isn't the person standing there in the dark. It's the door. That quiet, careful click. I've been driving long haul for about 11 years. I know I-65 like I know my own kitchen. The stretch through Alabama, especially south of Birmingham, it gets bad sometimes. Accidents, rubberneckers, construction zones that seem to never actually finish. You just learn to sit in it. But that Thursday in late October, I'd already been behind the wheel for 9 hours, and the jam wasn't moving. I mean, genuinely not moving. I'd rolled forward maybe 40 feet in the last hour. The GPS showed red for what looked like 12 miles ahead, and dispatch wasn't picking up, and I had a delivery window I was already gonna miss. So I did something I almost never do. I took an exit I didn't recognize. It was one of those county road exits that doesn't really have a name, just a number, CR something. The sign was sun-bleached, and the off-ramp was rougher than it should have been, like it hadn't seen maintenance in a while. I figured I'd loop around through whatever small town was nearby, catch a state road, and come back onto 65 a few miles ahead of the backup. People do it. It usually works. The problem started almost immediately. The county road narrowed. Not dramatically, just enough that I was more aware of it. The trees on both sides were thick and close, the kind of old growth that blocks light even at 2 in the afternoon. My GPS lost the route twice in the first mile and kept rerouting me onto roads that didn't match what I was seeing. I turned it off and just drove forward, figuring I'd find a town eventually. I found a gas station instead. It was set back from the road maybe 30 feet, gravel lot, one of those old canopy stations with 2 regular pumps and a hand-painted sign on the building that said cold drinks and bait. The building itself was cinder block, painted yellow a long time ago. The paint was coming off in strips. There was a porch along the front with 3 plastic lawn chairs, the kind you see at every dollar store. 3 men were sitting in them. My fuel gauge was sitting just above the red. I didn't have much of a choice. I pulled in and almost immediately realized there were no diesel pumps, just 2 regular units with those old analog dials. I needed diesel. I wasn't going to get it here. But I needed to eat something, and I needed to check my phone. And honestly, I needed to use a bathroom. So I cut the engine and sat there for a second. The 3 men on the porch hadn't moved when I pulled in. They were all looking at the truck, not at me through the windshield, just at the truck itself. One of them was maybe 60, wearing a John Deere hat and a flannel shirt despite it being probably 70 degrees out. The other 2 were younger, mid-30s maybe, both in dark work pants. They weren't talking to each other. They were just sitting there, watching. I told myself that's just what people do out here. Sit on porches, watch things. I went inside. The woman behind the counter was somewhere between 50 and 70, hard to say. She didn't greet me. She was watching a small television mounted on the wall, some court show with the volume low. I found a refrigerator case along the back wall and grabbed a bottle of water and a Gatorade. There was a spinning rack of packaged food near the register. I grabbed what was labeled a ham and cheese sandwich in plastic wrap, though it didn't look like it had been made recently. I wasn't in a position to be selective. While she was ringing me up, I looked out the front window. The 3 men on the porch were still there, but now they weren't looking at the truck. They were looking at the door. The one in the John Deere hat was leaning forward slightly with his elbows on his knees, and even through the dirty glass I could tell his eyes were on the entrance. I paid. I asked the woman behind the counter if there was a bathroom. She pointed to a door at the back without looking at me. I went back, used it, and when I came out I stood near the door for a second before pushing it open. Through the window to my left I could see the porch. One of the younger men had stood up and moved to the edge of the steps, facing the lot, facing my truck. He had something in his hand. I couldn't tell what it was. It was small, dark, and he was just holding it at his side. I pushed out the door. All 3 of them shifted when they heard it open. The man at the steps turned his head toward me. The one in the flannel hat leaned back slowly, like someone who'd just seen something they expected to see. I walked to my truck. I kept my pace normal. I did not run. I got in, locked the doors, started the engine, and pulled out onto the road without stopping to look back. I drove for 22 miles before I found a diesel pump at a Shell station off a state highway. The attendant there was a young guy, maybe 19,
and when I mentioned I'd come from back up one of the county roads, he looked at me and said, "Which one?" I told him the number. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he said, "Yeah, you don't really want to stop along there." I asked him why. He just shrugged. People go missing out that way sometimes, has for years. I never found out anything more specific than that. I looked it up when I got home. There were a few news articles, nothing recent, nothing definitive. A couple of names, a couple of cold cases, all of them travelers, all of them passing through. No arrests, no suspects named. That exit on 65, I've passed it maybe 30 times since then. I've never taken it again, and every time I go by it, I think about those 3 men on that porch and wonder how many people they watched walk back into the dark and how many of them made it back to their trucks.